Good morning, all. My name's Dave Hackett. I am part of your board of trustees, and it's my pleasure and privilege to welcome you all this morning. And I was just telling Paul, our presenter, that the hardest thing for me about being board welcomer, and there's really nothing hard about it at all, but is looking out at y'all and seeing all these people that I want to know better and how to make that happen. Anyway, we'll work on that. Okay, I promise. So I use he, him pronouns. Thank you for coming to our sanctuary. Another person. We are a community of people. I think a lot of people come to churches because they're seeking community and friendship, and that's certainly true for me, and I suspect for most of us. Part of what brings us together here and why people tend to stay is because we share so many values. That's the glue that holds us together, I believe. That's the glue that keeps me coming here. I was raised by my Christian Scientist mother, and when Cindy recruited me to come to a UU church, I said sure, and I against my better judgment, I really liked it, but I was so caught in the past that I wouldn't sing the hymns unless I read ahead to make sure I agreed with the words. And it was 7 years before I signed a membership book. So talk about a tough shopper. And but I am so grateful for all I've learned from this UU community, and I appreciate your support and friendship very much. We are a welcoming community, all different genders, different beliefs. You're welcome here just the way you are. Yeah, but when we're here, we have an opportunity, or I have an opportunity, and hopefully we're all in a similar mode of taking time out, making time in our lives to think about what really matters and how to get along together and learn and grow. And that's the main event. That's why I keep coming back Sunday after Sunday. If you're a visitor here for the first time, we're delighted that you're here. Shopping is good. Take your time, give us multiple tries, talk to people, ask questions, but don't be as skeptical as I was. It's really not that bad. Really, I'm silly. So please explore. We have an e-news, weekly newsletter that tells you a lot about what's going on. There's a Unitarian Universalist website in the sky that has a very thorough presentation of our values and what brings us together. And so there's lots of information available. And just talk with whoever you want this morning, please, especially me, because I really like that part. So we have some announcements. Yuri is here somewhere. Ta-da. This is Yuri.
Hi, everyone. I am Yuri. I use he, they pronouns, and I am the librarian of the Tahoma Unitarian Universalist congregation. Since January, I've been working on redoing the entire library. Some of y'all have seen me in and out trying to rehome some books. And on July 27th, we are having our grand opening book fair. We will be raising money to get new bookcases for the library, which I did forget to mention last week. It is cash and check only, but it's on a Sunday. It'll be from noon until 5 p.m. If anyone would like to volunteer, always down for some help, either helping me do some of the cataloging or helping for the event itself would be appreciated. But we will have books, we'll have keychains, we'll have some jewelry, some t-shirts, a whole bunch of stuff. It'll be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri. One of the important parts of our ritual Sunday mornings is our land acknowledgement. And I would like to read that now. As we begin our service in this beautiful place called Tahoma, how many people besides me are in love with Mount Rainier? Raise your hand. Oh yeah, thank you for that. I acknowledge we meet today in the land of the Coast Salish people, including the Puyallup tribal nation, a land from which they were forcibly displaced. I honor the resiliency of Indigenous people, and I stand with them as they continue to protect their culture, their land, their water, and fight for the viability of their culture and community, their sovereignty, and their very existence as an integral part of our continent. Lastly, please silence your electronic devices or put them in worship mode, as it says here very artfully. I really like that. And now, let us be together. Oh, I get to ring the bell. This is so good. Okay, cover your ears.
This morning, our opening words are from The Violence of Love, a collection of sermons and letters of St. Oscar Romero. A church that doesn't provoke any crisis, a gospel that doesn't unsettle, a word of God that doesn't get under anyone's skin, a word of God that doesn't touch the real sin of the society in which it is being proclaimed. What gospel is that? Very nice, pious considerations that don't bother anyone? That's what many would like preaching to be. Those preachers who avoid every thorny matter so as not to be harassed, so as not to have conflicts and difficulties, they do not light up the world they live in.
Morning, I'm Charlie Kaparik. I use he, him, and some gender fluid pronouns. I'm your celebrant today. I would like to invite Yuri up to light the chalice. If you could please join me in the words on the screen. We light this chalice in deep respect for the mystery and holiness of life, in honor and gratitude for those who have gone before, with love and compassion for those who dwell among us, and with hope and faith for the generations to come. Would like to join the Lauren and the choir, hymn number 142, Let There Be Light.
These hymns are in your gray hymnal. Kind of in your face. I need a booster chair. Can I make it lower? Hey, Lauren, can I make it lower? A little bit. Thank you. I need a car seat. It's good to know yourself, right? Good morning, my friends. How are you today? I'm so glad to see you. My name is Cindy Hackett. Some of you know me. And before I retired, one of my favorite things to do, and I still like to do it, is do story times with kids, because I was a librarian. So this story while we're reading together, I'd like you to think about something. Just, just kind of just keep it in your back of your head, maybe behind your ear. I'd like you to think about something that if you saw it happening, eventually you might be willing to speak up about, to bear witness to. You might not know what to do, but just to think about a time when maybe that you did do that, or maybe think about a time as I do. I have a time in my history when I didn't do that and I wished I had, and I learned from that. Okay? So this book is The Smallest Girl in the Smallest Grade. Oh, I'd also like to welcome our friends from home. Thanks for being here. It's written by Justin Roberts, who is a musician, interestingly, and illustrated by Christian Robinson. An arch. And actually, we don't.
Good morning, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me. My internet is unstable. Now is the time to share our gifts with our congregation. Our gifts keep our program strong, pay our staff and our minister, and they are so appreciated. In the sanctuary, baskets will be passed around, and there are 2 baskets at the front for
please join me in the words on the screen? We dedicate ourselves and our offerings to the work of this congregation, weaving a tapestry of love we call community, both within and beyond these walls. And please join us in the choir in hymn number 123.
Come unto me, sing in my heart, stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move heaven and earth, giving life, justice, roots forming close, wings set me free, Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
To sing about freedom and to pray for its coming is not enough. Freedom must be actualized in history by oppressed peoples who accept the intellectual challenge to analyze the world for the purpose of changing it. James H. Cone. Two weeks ago, Margot talked about freedom and liberation, and she talked about her preparation for the No Kings protest. And as I was prepping for this sermon, I was very well aware that yesterday was Pride here in Tacoma at Wright Park. And that Pride originated as a riot, the Stonewall riots. And even after it wasn't a riot, it was still a civil action. It was still a protest, a fight against the oppression. And it got me looking at the struggles we are facing now. Not the same struggles that were fought in Stonewall, but, well, I mean, it's the same, but different. And I ended up looking at a thing called liberation theology, since Margot talked about that word. So I know this may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I've often been told that people appreciate that sometimes I mix in some academic context with my philosophy and spirituality. And that's going to be no different here. We're going to have a little bit of a history lesson. And unfortunately, well, UU isn't explicitly Christian. We do have some origins there. And here in America, as we look at the current problem and as we look at our historical problems, often those things are phrased and explored in the context of Christianity. So I'll be pulling a lot of words from people who phrase their struggles in that way. And while I know that's not everybody's history here, that is some of the history we'll get into. I'm also aware that the history we'll be going into, as we talk about liberation theology, can be overwhelming. Liberation as concept is a struggle against oppression. And as we look at its history, we'll find that the places it's born are not friendly places. But if you'll bear with me, hopefully by the end we can get to some hope, some things we can do in this fearful time. As we look to the origin of liberation theology, we go to Latin America in the early to mid 1900s. But to set the stage for its birth, we look a little further. Specifically, it happened across most of Latin America, but the story that I find myself telling is the story of Oscar Romero, Saint Oscar Romero that I quoted earlier. He's from El Salvador. And the problems in El Salvador went back to the late 1800s. Turns out, people like coffee. And I don't know about you, but I like coffee. We got coffee right over there. But it turns out, El Salvador, great place for growing coffee. The problem was 1% of the people in El Salvador owned 75% of the tillable land. And over the course of the late 1800s and early 1900s, that wealth gap only grew. And the rich oligarchs ran the country, and the poor folk worked the land. And there was resistance, there was pushback. But as we get to the late 1970s, we have a situation where the oligarchs are backing the military because it's taking the military to try to keep the protests under control. And unfortunately, when we look at this in hindsight, there's a little bit of a PR problem for America here, as the National Liberation Front, the movement of the people against the oligarchs, well, they could trace some of their money back to Cuba and Castro, which meant that the US, of course, had to support the oligarchs and the military. Well, they didn't have to, but we did in the name of the Cold War. And so US money and US weapons went into the hands of the Salvadoran military as they crushed and ground against the people. By the end of the Salvadoran Civil War, 25% of the people, 25% of the population was displaced out of their homes and villages. There were somewhere around 500,000 people murdered over the course of that war. But in it you have people like Oscar Romero, who decided that the church shouldn't just stay inside the chapel. That if we were really serious about loving each other, if we were really serious about doing the work of the divine, about embodying love, that we couldn't really be satisfied with just donating to some food banks. They developed a concept that at the time was denounced by the Vatican, that they referred to as institutional or systemic sin. that sin as a concept was not committed just by people, but that you could have institutions, organizations, and systems that by nature and by design oppressed and harmed its people. And that if we really loved those around us, that we would need to demand that those systems change. That if we really wanted liberation, if we really wanted to free the oppressed, we would need to challenge the systems. We would need to do more than just run a food bank. Because if we could make it so that our systems didn't leave people hungry, there would be no need for the food bank. And wouldn't that truly be more free? And so Oscar Romero was the face of this liberation theology movement in El Salvador. And he sent a letter to the US pleading with them to stop sending weapons to the Salvadoran military, and described just how those weapons were being used. Less than a week later, he was preaching from the pulpit in his chapel. The doors at the back open so that anybody could come in. But instead, what came in that door was an assassin. And he was gunned down at his pulpit in the middle of Mass by a Salvadoran death squad. Now, this sounds really depressing because it is. But I think what we need to take from this is the idea that maybe Oscar Romero, living in those places, experiencing that horror, might have some things to teach us. There might be lessons to be learned. It is very easy to be servants of the word without disturbing the world. A very spiritualistic word, a word without any commitment to history, a word that can sound in any part of the world because it belongs to no part of the world. A word like that creates no problems, starts no conflicts. What starts conflicts and persecutions, what marks the genuine church, is when the word, burning like the word of the prophets, proclaims to the people and accuses, proclaims God's wonders to be believed and venerated, and accuses of sin those who oppose God's reign, so that they may tear out the sin of their hearts, out of the societies, out of their laws, out of the structures that oppress, that imprison, that violate the rights of God and of humanity. That is the hard service of the word. But God's Spirit goes with the prophet, with the preacher, for he is Christ who keeps on proclaiming his reign to the people of all times. Now, there is another individual who was martyred in the Salvadoran conflict towards the end of it, as we moved away from the village-wide massacres into small cases of people just being disappeared. Towards the end, put some PR push on the US to try and wrap some of it up. There were 6 Jesuits at the Jesuit University there that were murdered, again, for speaking out for the people. And he is quoted by the author James Cone. James Cone wrote a book using the foundations of liberation theology to talk about the African American struggle against oppression here in the United States. He wrote a book called The Cross and the Lynching Tree, about how both represent death, but how those two things mean very different people, very different things to white Christians, and yet very similar things to Black Christians. He wrote of the cross, "Unfortunately, during the course of 2,000 years of Christian history, this symbol of salvation has been detached from any reference to the ongoing suffering and oppression of human beings. Those whom Ignacio Ellacuria, the Salvadoran martyr, called the crucified peoples of history." And I'll be honest, reading through The Cross and the Lynching Tree, which describes the lynching south of the US, it was so very easy to see the parallels to what's happening now. People wearing the cross around their neck, terrorizing people that look different than them, using the law, using white apathy to terrorize, to keep in check, to prove their superiority. There was a point where I had to set the book down because I couldn't take to read it anymore. It resounded so thoroughly with everything we're seeing now that it was hard to figure out where we come out of this. What is the hope we can find on the other side of this as we watch history be mirrored and mirrored again? But as we struggle with that, I think we can find some instructions and some hope from both Oscar Romero and James Cone. And the first, I think, in this moment of darkness we find ourselves in and we find ourselves struggling, and how do we even motivate ourselves to move forward? We lean on James Cone, who talked about the life of the African American in the lynching South and their struggle as what he referred to them as the death bound. The death bound, that at any moment in any day, death could come for them. Did not matter. But what kept them looking forward, what kept them from succumbing to the darkness, were two things. The first was church on Sunday morning. The very compelling story of Christ, for whom death was not the end, that proved that love could conquer everything that is happening to them. And that was a compelling story for them. But of equal importance, and a thing that we might find helpful, he said was equally important to their surviving their struggle. Sure, church on Sunday morning, but also Friday night juke joints. Taking the time to allow yourself the music, the dance. In the juke joints, they could sing the songs where they told the man what they really thought, even though the man wasn't in the room with them. They could dance, they could be themselves, they could still find the joy of living. And I think as we deal with where we're at now, we still need to find those moments. Margot talked about the Diwali celebrations that were canceled because of the threat of ICE. But the thing that she said was that those celebrations would still happen, just not at the public park. And that's important that we still find ways of doing that, of having that hope for us, keeping ourselves from falling into that dark pit 100% of the time. But what do we do? Oscar Romero has called us to struggle, has called us to fight, has called us to be active and challenge. And this, again, was another part I struggled with because it feels so oppressive. How do we fight back against ICE? How do we fight back against everything that's happening? But it's the little things. It's the mutual aid. It's the community. As the Salvadoran military tried to scourge the countryside, what they struggled with was that there were always mutual aids, community gardens, trade and labor unionists, people willing to do the small things, to support each other, to be part of the community. And so that, I think, is the challenge we are given in this time, is to find those communities around us, find the mutual aid groups, join the La Resistance team protesting at the ICE detention center, find a community garden. We have one not too far from our house at the end of a road that the land isn't quite right for a house, so some folks started putting a garden there. Find those places, find those communities. Some of my friends joined a local community group that was focused on being prepared in the case of earthquake, what supplies they would need, getting trained in medical triage. Find those groups, participate in those things, reach out and support each other and support the people in need. And yes, fight the systems. Petition Olympia, petition your local city council for anti-discrimination, for minimum wage, to fight against the private prison systems. Do what you can to challenge the system when you can. But in the meantime, in this struggle, do the small things. Find the communities around you that aren't just this here. Reach out to your neighbors. Find your neighborhood community centers. Do the work that needs doing so that our love is not just here in the church, but in the community doing the work it needs to. So as we set an intention, I would ask you to think about what are the things you could do, the little things. They don't have to fundamentally change your life, but what are some of the organizations that you could contribute to? What day might you be able to find a few hours to commit to the people around you? Sorry. Lauren and the choir will lead us in hymn 157, Step by Step, the Longest March.
This is also in the gray hymnal, and we are going to sing through it twice. Many stars are forming,
Our closing words are from Wayne B. Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear. And the stakes are very high. For deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. We please join us in the closing blessing song? Oh, the chalice. Dang it. Please join me in the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now, our closing blessing song.